Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Caleb Likes Books. Today I have another book review for you, and that is for Theft of Fire by Devon Eriksen, the first book in the Orbital Space series. I believe this is supposed to be a 4-book series as far as I'm aware. Before I start talking about this review, I was sent this book for free by the author's wife, Christine, so thank you to her for sending this my way. I appreciate it. She sent me this book to review and to read and all that kind of thing. That was back in mid-January, I want to say. I've been trying to find a place to fit it in over the last few months. Of course, I've got a lot of stuff that I want to read and all that kind of thing. But I managed to get it in March. Which I was very happy about. So to get into this book, this is a self-published sci-fi book, which I'd heard a lot of good things about. I was very curious to check it out because I had heard a lot about it, and a lot of people seemed to enjoy it, different things like that. And for a self-published book, it seemed fairly popular, so I was curious what I would think of it. And I went in hoping to enjoy it, as I do with every book that I read. But I am sad to say I unfortunately did not care for this book too much. But there were things in it that I enjoyed, and I want to highlight those as well because I want to be, fair and balanced and talk about the good things just as I want to talk about the things that did not work for me. So to first discuss the good things, as usual, the one thing that most stood out to me about this book that I really liked was the strong sense of voice that was in this book. I don't know if it was the author's voice or if it was the author trying to have the character's voice come through, or a mix of both perhaps. But either way, the sense of voice and personality to the writing in this book is extremely strong. The writing itself was really well done. The dialogue was well done. The description, all that kind of thing. The writing as a whole, the prose of this book was well done. The sense of style and character to the character's voice. This is a first-person perspective book. The character had, even if this character never once spoke in this book, you could tell the kind of person they are, because there is a strong sense of personality to the writing, which is something I really enjoyed, something I appreciated about this book. I think that was very, very well done. I also think that the world building in this book was pretty interesting. This book is, I can't remember exactly if it's in the 2100s or the 2200s, exactly what time frame it is, but either way, it's a century or two in the future. So it does take place kind of in the real world, reflective of the real world. And as such, there are things from, current day or in our past, or even things that are in the future that happen in between, now and the timeline of the book, things that are referenced. So it builds a strong sense of setting. There are certain things about it that I didn't quite love the execution of, which I'll talk about later, but the setting work in general is very good. It really kind of grounds itself in a strong sense of setting. I really enjoyed seeing the way that the world building worked. I enjoyed seeing kind of what things were involved. For example, a big part of this book, for example, is that SpaceX is still around and is a major power in the galaxy, and things like that. You have different events that are referenced. You have, I think I remember things like the Second American Civil War, or, different things that really kind of build the setting in a very interesting way. And I really liked the way that was done as well. I think the character development, which I have my issues with, which I'll talk about, but I think that the characters, you get a good sense of who they are, you get a good sense of their backstory, you get a good sense of their personality. Each character, this is a very small scale book in terms of characters. There's only really 3 characters in this book, and this is very much a character-driven book. The plot really is, the spacer, the space miner, has his ship hijacked by this woman who has this AI, which those are basically the 3 characters, and she says, "I'm taking your ship, we're gonna go do something." That's basically what this book is. And the plot itself is fine, but the characters is a very character-driven book. You get a good sense of all of the characters, who they are. You get, like I said, between the voice and the actual dialogue and things like that, you get a good sense of who this protagonist or this viewpoint character is. You get a good sense of who this woman is. You get a good sense of the AI, or the AI actually has a lot of personality. And so you get a very strong sense of who these characters are. The characters themselves are written in a way that, you get a lot of character through them. You get a lot of backstory for all three of these characters, which is done well. They all have a strong sense of voice. Like, you can tell just, there are decent length sections of this book that are just dialogue, no dialogue tags, no description, just straight dialogue. And you can usually tell just by the dialogue itself who is speaking. So each of the characters have a strong sense of person to them, which I enjoyed. All of that said, there are reasons I did not enjoy this book. The first of those, and probably the most minor of which, is the plot of this book essentially was not terribly interesting to me. There's not a whole lot to it, really. Like I said, there's this person hijacks another person's ship and says, we're going to go do something. I need you to go with me, and I need your ship to do it. And that is kind of the plot of this book. Of course, there's some kinks that get thrown into there, some things that go a little bit wrong, but that generally is the concept of it. And I just personally didn't find it terribly interesting. I was curious to see where it was headed, but it felt like there wasn't a lot of forward momentum with the plot a lot of the time to me. It really felt like most things started happening towards like the last third of the book. The rest of the book was a lot of character dialogue, a lot of interactions, things like that. So to me, the plot was not the strong element of this book. And so, and the world building is good, but if you just have good world building, then you don't, in my opinion, have too much of a book. So then you have the characters. And while the characters are well defined, well written, I guess, things like that, I did not enjoy the characters almost at all. The one exception to this is the AI character, who I believe is named Leela. Unfortunately, I cannot remember I think the guy is Marcus, and the woman, I can't remember her name off the top of my head. But the AI, Leela, does have a good sense of personality. She is a character that I did not love, but I did enjoy to a greater degree than the other two. I enjoyed some of the theming, especially with her character being an AI. There's some interesting themes in this book about AI, which I guess would also be a positive point towards this book. Different things about, the treatment of AI, about the personhood of AI is very interesting. But I enjoyed her character a decent amount. I didn't love her character, but I enjoyed her character a decent amount. The other two characters, I did not enjoy. I did not like them. And that could be intentional. I'm sure that is at least partially intentional, because these characters do acknowledge in this book, in their dialogue between each other, that neither of them are exactly good people. But I found both of them intensely unlikable to the point that I did not want to read about them. And you can have an unlikable character, for sure, but when all the book, at least to me, was offering was these characters and I wasn't enjoying them, to me that was just, it made it to be an unenjoyable reading experience. I thought that both of these characters had a lot of qualities that I just did not enjoy reading about. Certain things, even from the POV character, Marcus, I believe, the way that he would describe this woman that hijacked his ship, which, I mean, she hijacked his ship. I can understand why he'd be a little annoyed about that. But the way that he described her, the way that he viewed her as a person, the way that he viewed her in all kinds of ways, which I'm not going to get into, because there's just a lot there. There's a lot of things about who he is that I did not like, and I actively kind of hated these characters, and it just made it not an enjoyable reading experience for me, which was unfortunate, because like I said, I could see there's interesting character work here. They're written well, they've got backstories to them. I didn't necessarily love everything about their backstories, but they were there. They were written, with some depth to them, and things like that, but I just did not enjoy reading about them. And another thing that kind of bothered me about this book a little bit was in relation to the world building, which I do generally enjoy in this book. I think the world building in this book generally is well done. But there are certain places where it really sucked the immersion out of the book for me. There's a particular example which isn't like related to spoilers or anything. But this book talks about, it doesn't say his name, but it makes it very clear that this book is talking about Elon Musk. And I'm not going to get into any opinions I may or may not have about Elon Musk here, but just the way that he was described, it's like the dialogue and the plot stopped so that this book could describe who Elon Musk is and people's thoughts about him and what he did and all these kinds of things. And I can he is relevant to this plot, given it, you know, it does take place long after now, but, you know, SpaceX is a big part of this story. There are other reasons why he is relevant as well, so I can understand bringing him up, but the length to which that was brought up just completely broke the immersion of the book for me, and it took me several minutes to recover from that. So that was another thing that I did not quite love about it. And kind of speaking of, you know, the story kind of stopping, another thing about the characters that did kind of bother me is, I mentioned earlier, like there's a plot, there's not a ton to it, at least for a large chunk of the book. And that's because one thing that bothered me is that for a period which I think could be expressed in the 100 to 150 page range earlier in the book, like in the first half of the book, somewhere in there, nothing happens in this book except for characters bickering with each other. And eventually that just became very exhausting to read and not enjoyable to read. I already didn't like these characters, but just having them do nothing productive, nothing even in general seemingly, aside from occasionally doing some things to tinker with the ship and then just bickering with each other the rest of the time for 100, 150 pages. I just did not enjoy that. And just generally speaking, aside from Leela, the AI, there was nothing about these characters that really worked for me in terms of actually enjoying reading about them. So that is by far the biggest thing that I did not enjoy in this book, I guess. But I've kind of harped on all this for a while now. I feel like this video is getting a bit long. I want to kind of wrap things up here. I could go probably more in depth if I wanted to, but I don't want to make this video super duper long. Overall, I can appreciate elements of this book. I think things about it are done well. If I were to rate this book as objectively as I possibly can, removing any dislike of the characters or just the way that I felt while reading this book, I would probably give it a solid, like, a 6 out of 10, which to me is not a great score by any means, but it's an okay score. To me, it would be like an above average. Like, there's things about it that are done well, things about it that really bothered me, but in general, I think that there was, you know, something to this book. But in terms of my own personal enjoyment, the way that I felt after reading this book, the way that I felt while reading this book, I would probably give it like a 4.5 out of 10, which is unfortunate because I wanted to like this book. There's things about it that I enjoyed, but ultimately this book just did not do it for me. And even though there are things that I appreciated about this book, things that I enjoyed, ultimately the characters and some other minor things here and there just completely sucked the enjoyment of this book out of it for me, which is just unfortunate. So that's generally my thoughts on this book. I feel like I have a lot to say about this book, but I want to try to not make this video terribly long. It's already getting pretty long. So that's pretty much all I have to talk about in this review. Let me know in the comments if you have read Theft of Fire before and what you thought of it. If so, if you enjoyed it more than I did, then awesome. I'm glad. I generally seem to have the minority opinion on this. Generally, a lot of people seem to enjoy it. I would encourage all of you, if this book sounds interesting to you in any way, to go check it out, support this author. You know, there's clearly talent to this writing, talent that Devon Eriksen clearly has, and I would encourage you to go and support him if you would like to and support his work. It's just that this book particularly did not work for me. But I would encourage you, obviously, to go read it if it sounds interesting to you and try it for yourself. But yeah, if you've read it, let me know what you thought of it. If you're interested in it, let me know that as well. Whatever you thought, let me know down in the comments. That is pretty much it for this video, so thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.